This is part two of Outlook with me, Mubin Azar. Welcome back. We're picking up the story of Darcus Beese, the son of prominent race equality activists Darcus Howe and Barbara Beese. Darcus was good at talking, so from sweeping up in a trendy West London hair salon, he began networking with record industry tastemakers. As a music lover, Darcus was excited by bubbling scenes and new voices. So when he found out an assistant role had opened up at the world-famous label Island Records, it was a dream come true. Working in their A&R department, Darcus would spend weeks on the road, going to shows, collecting records, and most importantly, trying to discover the next big thing. His work paid off as he rose through the ranks, nurturing talent and creating hits, with stars like the British pop group The Sugar Babes and the singer Tayo Cruz, and a whole bunch of others too. And when Darcus met with Amy Winehouse, he knew he was onto a once-in-a-lifetime kind of discovery.
Someone had played me a cassette, and it was their producer, and their producer had been working with Amy, and there was two songs on there. One was called Detachment and one was called Procrastination. And this voice came across, and I pressed stop on the cassette, rewound it, and I went, "Who's that?" And they was like, I can't tell you. And, you know, as soon as I heard Amy, you kind of, this is like some Nina or some Billie Holiday.
It's Billie Holiday. Yeah, of course.
And lyrically, it was like, it was almost a throwback, but futuristic, right? My very first interaction was after months and months of trying to find the voice and no internet, pre-internet. There was the studio jungle drums. You'd always hear who's working in the studios. And studios in London were like betting shops or a pub. Every street corner, every street had a studio. So there was a network of people that were always in the studios and blah, blah, blah. And she was already developing inside EMI Studios. But I didn't find out until later on that she was holed down in EMI Studios because there was this big hush around her. So, yeah, I had to kind of go scouting. And so that when I did meet her, when I finally found her, the voice that I'd heard and the girl who's, when I walked into the room, whose back was to me, taking photos of her tattoos.
Yes.
And she turned round and I introduced myself and I said, "I'm Darcus Beese. I've been looking for you. I've been trying to find you." And she was like, "So?" Like, very matter of fact. But she was, like most people, someone that you just like to just hang out with and kick it. I just remember it was never about the hit with Amy. It was, she's writing records that was way ahead of her years.
Of course.
And because of musically what I had been listening to, it just didn't mess with me and her. So even though no one knew what was in store, the fact that there's this 16, 17, 18-year-old girl that jazz was the Bible and storytelling was equally as important as the music, and her shoe game was off the scale as well. And she was polarising as well, which...
In what sense?
You either loved it or you hated it.
Oh, in terms of that first record?
Or you either liked her or you didn't.
Okay, so her personality as well.
That was actually the best place to be, is when you're polarising, when people kind of go, "I don't get it," or "I don't like it."
Right.
That's the best place to be.
Because you're provoking something.
Yeah.
What I want to know is when Back to Black was being made, did the team and did you have any understanding of what was about to happen?
No. There was two things happening. One, I just handed in my resignation at Island Records. Amy had just flown out to New York to meet Mark.
We're talking about Mark Ronson,
Mark Ronson,
who would produce most of that record. Yeah.
And I was really upset with the direction that Island Records was going in. And I was having a back and forth with the boss at the time, but I had to go and see Mark and Amy out in New York. And they had just spent weeks hanging out, going record shopping and just talking vibes and blah, blah, blah. As I was flying out, I got a call from Amy saying, "Listen, my nan's fallen ill. So when you fly in, let's go straight to the studio and listen to the music, because I've got to leave the studio and go straight to the airport." So I fly in and I go straight to Mark's studio, and we're sitting there, we're talking, and the first record they play is Rehab. And I'm like, "Mark, stop, rewind that record." I look at Amy, I went, "You didn't."
She was struggling with addiction already.
Yeah.
It was public.
Yeah. Then he played Back to Black. This is like proper early demos. Dat Tones hadn't played on it, the band hadn't played on it. Then they played me You Know I'm No Good, And then they played Love is a Losing Game. And I just remember sitting there going, holy cow. And then we went downstairs for a drink and she said, what do you think? And I went, amazing. She went, do you reckon? Do you think people think I'm trying it? And I went, I don't know. This is just like, this is some off key. This is just and I wasn't sure what we had. And I remember going back and I played it to a couple of people. Another person was like, no, that's amazing.
So all this is kicking off. You'd sent your resignation.
As a physical thing, I went and gave my resignation. My boss at the time was refusing to take it. And I remember trying to just withdraw the resignation because I wasn't going to walk away from what I had just heard. And luckily, I didn't.
In 2008, Amy Winehouse was nominated for 6 Grammy Awards. The album, Back to Black, was a commercial monster. But in the tabloids, her success was often sidelined by their fascination with her personal life. Her turbulent relationships and substance abuse found Amy plastered across the press. When Amy was denied a visa to the US after being scheduled to perform at the 50th Grammy Awards, everyone knew about it. Relentlessly, the spotlight was on Amy.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the chairman of the board and myself, welcome to the 50th Annual Grammy Awards.
You know the night, there's the famous clip of Amy, she can't get into the States. And it's Grammy night, so it's via video link. Mm-hmm. There's a moment where, you know, she's Amy, she's the pop star because she's got the beehive and we know who she is. But then they tell her she's just won a Grammy and she also she looks like a girl from Camden.
Thank you to everyone at Island Records.
Where were you at that point?
I'm not showing you the time, I'm showing you the goosebumps.
You're actually shaking.
Yeah, no, that was, I remember going backstage and saying to her, you done it, like 5 Grammys. Because we were in a different time zone, because it was the first time they'd broadcast the Grammys in its history outside of America. That's how massive she was. And I remember that whole evening, and you weren't hugging a girl that had just won 5 Grammys. There wasn't like loads of people around. It was very quiet. It was only her just backstage. And I just thought there was other things on her mind, if I could say that.
Yeah, she was in a different place.
There's a lot of energy she would have had to have mustered for that night.
Okay.
So it's the Grammys.
Yeah.
The world knows her problems. And she's got to pull it together for one performance on one of the biggest nights of her life. And again, with the benefit of hindsight, she would have been nervous as anyone, more troubled than the next person.
I'm genuinely sorry to ask you this. Where were you when you heard the news?
I was literally taking my son, young Darcus. I had his 3-wheeler in one hand and I was just guiding him out the door. And Ted Cockle, who was my co-president at the time, called me and he said, where are you? And I said, I'm just taking my son out for a walk. He said, you need to sit down. And I was like, oh no, what's happened now? And he said, Amy's dead. And I carried on, pulling the door behind me, getting my son on his bike and walking towards the river to go for a walk. I said, say that again, it's Amy's dead. They found Amy dead. And I went, I'm going to call you back. Put the phone down, and then my phone started to blow up.
It was July 2011. The news of Amy's passing was everywhere.
The family of Amy Winehouse say that they've been left bereft by the young singer's sudden death. The 27-year-old was found dead at her home in London yesterday afternoon. It's still not known how she died.
We walked home, got in, and then I started crying. And then people who you just don't think would ever have your number get your number and ask you the most craziest questions at the most craziest time. You know, people go, were you surprised? Of course you're surprised. But, you know, there's only so much the human body can take.
An inquest into the
death of the singer Amy Winehouse has heard that she died after drinking a very large quantity of alcohol, well above the level that can be fatal. The coroner was told that the 27-year-old star, who was found dead at her flat in July, had only just started drinking again, having not touched alcohol for 3 weeks.
Today, when you have these conversations, how do you remember Amy?
I just see her as a good human being that created art. That's the category that I put her in terms of the greats. It's the 1% that is the evergreen, that you can pass down, that lives beyond, that gives reference to, that inspires. I've been able to touch the 1%.